Okay, so I am back. My sincerest apologies. This is part 2 of my EE Live Q&A for June the 15th. And I want to apologize. I was running low on my batteries here on my iPad, so I had to go and grab my cord and plug back in. So I want to pick up where I left off. And where I left off was I was talking about some of the updates that I'd received from our National Canadian Bar Association's Immigration Conference in Toronto this past weekend, where we had sessions with the national government officials overseeing the various immigration programs. And 2 officials were there that were overseeing express entry and that were knowledgeable and involved in the whole express entry regime. So we had a chance to connect. Okay, people are back here. Rakul, hi. Great to see you guys reconnecting here. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with where I left off. So I just explained that police clearances are cumulative over a 10-year period. So if you've spent a number of days in a country stretching over the past 10 years, that could trigger the need for a police clearance. And why is that important? Because if you need a police clearance and you don't provide that police clearance, it could result in your express entry application being rejected. So can you imagine you spent a number of days in a specific country over the past 10 years, and it was never for one lengthy period of 6 months at a time. It was just a week here, a week there. And so you didn't think that you needed a police clearance. But then lo and behold, the government says, well, when I look at your travel history and I look at your personal history, I can see that you've actually spent enough days there to equate to at least 6 months, and you didn't provide a police clearance, so I'm rejecting your application. So you do not want that to happen. So make sure that when you're doing your travel history, especially when you get to the EAPR stage, when you're filing your permanent residence, that you make sure that you are counting those days in case you may need a police clearance from a country that you haven't actually permanently resided in. Now, this can be a problem too, because some countries, you actually have to show that you've lived there and you had a residence in order to get the police clearance. So anyways, I want to point that out to you so that you all are aware of it. Okay, adding family members. Okay, this is one I'm going to get to in the Q&A session. Okay, if you have a Canadian spouse, and some of you are in Canada, I just want to remind you that you just list non-accompanying within your profile. So list your spouse as non-accompanying, and then your comprehensive ranking score will be calculated as a single person and not including them. Self-employment. Understand that self-employment can be considered work experience for the purposes of the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So if you're outside of Canada, you have work experience as a self-employed individual, you can use that work experience, but not under the Canadian experience class. So if you're in Canada, you can't count work experience gained while you're self-employed. Now the wind is picking up here, so I hope this isn't there isn't too much background noise. Can I get some feedback from you guys? Is the wind, is the mic on my iPad, is it picking up the wind and making it difficult for you to hear me? Can you let me know? How is the audio? Can you hear me clearly enough, or is the wind a distraction? So I'll just wait for a little bit of feedback here. Okay, good, we're cool, thank you. Thanks and Alex said it's acceptable. Great. Okay, it's just okay. All right. No, it's good. Okay, awesome. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Okay. All right. Another question I get is people that say, "I had a paid vacation. Do I have to subtract that from my 1 year of work experience?" So let's say someone has a paid vacation for 2 weeks, and so they're wondering, well, can I submit my profile? Can I count that full 1 year of work experience if I spent 2 weeks on vacation? Well, here's the answer. If it was paid vacation, so this is vacation that you're entitled to via your employment, you're paid while you're away, then yes, you can count that time as if you were continuing to work. That's still a part of your employment. But if it was unpaid leave, such as parental leave without pay, then, or you took just an unpaid leave to go back to your home country for a month, then you can't. There's no credit for that. And that's if you are, for example, let's say you're in Canada and you're from the Philippines and you decide you want to go back and your employer says, yes, I'll give you 1 month of unpaid leave and you can go back. Well, you can't count that. So that's the difference. It's whether or not you were paid during that time that you were away from employment. So paid leave counts, unpaid leave does not. And that's whether you're in Canada traveling abroad or whether you're even in your home country. If you're in India or Pakistan or you're in Nigeria and you take a month off without pay, then you can't count that. Okay? Awesome. All right. Okay, here's another thing I really want to drill into you guys. Many people say, my employer is out of business. I can't get my work experience. I can't get my employment reference letter because my employer is out of business. Or my school that I obtained my education in is closed. Well, you have to understand that Express Entry, this program is ruthless. They do not care. And so if you can't get your educational credentials assessed because the school is shut down, then you're not getting an ECA and you're not getting any credit for it. Full stop. The government does not care. So in those circumstances, they reiterated that if the work experience, if your education is not verifiable, in other words, if they can't get an ECA from you for that, an educational credential assessment, because your school is shut down, then too bad, you're just not going to get the points. And there's no compromise for that. When it comes to work experience, well, yes, you can get alternatives to prove, other third-party reliable sources to prove that you did work where you said you worked. And we've talked about that in previous Q&As, so I'm not going to go over that in this one. But if your school, your education comes from a school that's not recognized, either by WES, the World Education Services, or any of the other educational credential assessing agencies, then I'm sorry. Like the government doesn't care. So you need to make sure that you understand that it's ruthless and it's harsh, and not everybody is going to have the full benefit if they don't meet the specific requirements that the specific requirements that the government asks for. Now, Akoti says, is it best not to include that employer that's no longer in existence? Well, obviously, if you need that work experience in order to qualify for Express Entry, and you need that for comprehensive ranking system points, then you're going to have to figure out other ways to prove or validate that you got that work experience. But if you don't need it, then it doesn't matter whether the business is shut down, whether the experience is at a low skill level, or even if it's at a skilled level. If you don't need it to achieve enough comprehensive ranking system points, then don't ever include it in your work experience. Now, that gets to another point, which emphasizes that they emphasized it is not misrepresentation to not include all of your work experience in that work experience section of the profile. It's not misrepresentation at all. Only include the work experience that you want to obtain CRS points for. So that's once and final. It is completely satisfied. I hope everybody listens to this, and trust me, if you have a ton of work experience that's 20 years old, you don't need it. You can only count work experience that's 10 years and no older than 10 years ago, and anything that is low skill also doesn't count. And if you don't need the comprehensive ranking system points, don't include that work experience in your work history. So leave it out. And they reaffirm that again and again. You will explain what you've been doing with your life in your personal history section once you get your ITA and once you file your EAPR, your Electronic Application for Permanent Residence. You will disclose all of that in that section, but not in the work history section. Okay. Okay, here's another one for you. All right, so someone else has asked, with educational credential assessments and prior education, sometimes people take accelerated programs. So it's a 3-year program, but they complete it in 2 years because they worked through the summer or just worked quicker. And the question is, do you put 3 years down or just 2 years for your education because that's how long it took you to achieve it? Well, the reality is, and this is what you need to understand, if the program is a 3-year program at that school, just because you completed it in an accelerated fashion, you can still indicate 3 years. And more often than not, your educational credential assessment will also confirm that. So even if you've done an accelerated program, you can include the full amount of that program. If it's a 3-year program and you did it in 2 years, you can indicate 3 years. Let's see. And then last little item that they wanted us to understand is that when it comes to obtaining an ITA, and I've talked about this in the past, no human being actually looks at it. No human being assesses your comprehensive ranking system score and issues an ITA. It is a computer. It's a computer algorithm. So whatever your answers are that you put into your profile, they're assessed electronically by a computer algorithm, and you are then issued an ITA. No human looks at it until it's actually at the EAPR stage. So I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, let's jump to our questions from listeners. And I'll show you here, I have a ton of these questions. I'm not probably going to get to all of them. Okay, here Sanjay says, if you don't show all of the work experience, will they reject since there's a gap after education? You're going to list your work experience in your personal history section. So I'm not quite sure what the question is there, but just because if you have a gap between your education and starting work, well, that gap might be, you're going to indicate unemployed during that period. So you shouldn't really worry about that too much. You just have to make sure that you have the full work experience that you need to meet the eligibility requirements for one of the programs, the Federal Skilled Worker, or the Canadian Experience Class, or the Federal Skilled Trade programs, and that you have the work experience you need to satisfy whatever you put in your profile to get your comprehensive ranking system points. Okay. All right, so let's go to the first question. So this question is from Gijo. So G-I-J-O. I think it's Gijo. Dear Mark, it's interesting with the wind and everything around here. I'm having trouble talking. Dear Mark, hope you're doing well. Appreciate the efforts you take to deliver for each live session. Thank you. Okay, my question. My wife is the primary applicant. Post-ITA, she will not be able to complete medicals as we're expecting a baby. Congratulations, that's awesome. We are expecting to upload docs by July 2017. So in that case, will CIC hold back our entire file till the full medical report is received? And the answer is yes, they will. They won't land you until your wife is able to complete the x-rays. And that's usually what holds things up. The blood work can be done, but it's the x-rays, because she has a baby, that there's dangers with that, and that will hold things up. And so he goes on to say here, to be more specific, if CIC asks us to submit the complete medicals by, say, January 2018, will the processing of our file from the scratch only start after January 2019, or most of the process will be completed as soon as we upload the files in July 2017? Well, the reality is they will continue to process your application based on all the information that you provide, but the final background and security checks, which is inclusive of police clearances, medicals, that won't be completed until the final medical is done. So, hope that answers your question. Thank you, Gijo. All right, next question here. All right, this one is from Ashraf, and Ashraf says, Dear Mark Holthe, I have enrolled your Express Entry step-by-step guide. I am practicing on it, and it is really interesting. 3 days ago, I've created an Express Entry profile for my relative and submitted as well. But after studying your Express Entry course, okay, all of you, you better listen to this now. After studying your Express Entry course, I found I did a few mistakes. Yes, this is the purpose of the $39 US per month that I charge, to help you avoid the mistakes that you don't realize you're making. And it's cheap. That is totally affordable. Could you please suggest me how to make it correction, or can I delete and cancel it? Yes, just cancel the profile, withdraw it, and resubmit a new one. If it's only been submitted for 3 days, then don't even worry about it. Remember, in past Q&As, oh, I'm competing with a bird here. He wants attention. In past Q&As, I told you that the government has now instituted date stamps on the date that you submit your profile. So in other words, if you submitted your profile today and someone submitted their profile tomorrow, and you both had, let's say, 413 points, which was the minimum threshold for one of the last draws, if they could only take 50 people and there were 100 people with 413 points, then what that means is, if you submitted your profile before the person that submits it tomorrow, then you would get the ITA and they would not. So if it was based on time stamping. So, but for you, really, Ashraf, for your relative, I wouldn't worry about it. I would withdraw the profile and I would resubmit it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, could you please suggest how to correct or delete it? So I just delete it. And then he says another thing, if I want to apply for PNP program under Express Entry, first of all, do I have to get a minimum score, 67 points through Federal Skilled Worker Program? Okay, the answer is a loaded one here. Some PNP programs don't even go through Express Entry. So you need to make sure that you're using the ones that, well, you need to explore which one you're applying under. Some don't require interaction with Express Entry. Many do have programs, and each of the programs are a little bit different. But in most cases, you do need to meet the minimum eligibility requirements for one of the federal programs. So in most cases, the answer actually is yes, that you need the 67 points first in order to be eligible for the other programs. All right, thanks for that question. Okay, here's the wind. You can see it's blowing, it's blowing my pages. All right, I'll give you another secret. Another reason I'm doing it out here is because my kids were getting ready to go to school this morning, and they were super loud, and so I needed to make sure that you could all hear me. And you can also hear the garbage truck is picking up our garbage out front. You're getting the full experience here, everyone. The full experience. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, so some of these, understand, I'm not going to be able to get to all the questions, but I will do the very best that I can. Okay, next question. Dear Mark, hope this email finds you well. This is from, whoa, okay, let's see. Kamaljeet. It's from Kamaljeet. Your Facebook Live Q&A session is impressive. Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm amongst the first, oh, this is awesome. I'm amongst the first 2,000 members of your group. Woo, that's awesome. Thanks for sticking around. We're over 29,000 members of our Facebook group now, our Express Entry Law Facebook group. So welcome for being one of the first pioneers. And invited to join many others from friends and family. Awesome, thank you. I also hope your daughter performed well in the school choir. Well, I hope so too. She does that tonight. So I'll report back to everyone on how it goes. My question for you is related to proof of funds. In the second last draw, one of my friends received an ITA and he was having the problem of funds. So his father opened up a bank savings account under applicant name and fixed deposit the required money. So he transferred the money into the account. Now, will that create any problems? The funds are less than a month old at present, and I would appreciate if we can get an explanation on this. Okay, this is also one that I've covered in past Q&As, but just a quick little response. If an individual receives money from family, they can receive that money. I always recommend that wherever possible, if people know they're going to be applying through Express Entry and submitting their profile, that they get their family members to transfer the funds well in advance, like at least 6 months previous. But the key here is that these funds need to be, they need to be unconditional. In other words, it can't be a loan. It has to be an irrevocable transfer. And so I will often have an affidavit, a sworn statement, something to confirm that you can include with your proof of funds that this money is not it's a full gift, and that it is not a loan, something that you'd have to pay back. And then you go through the process of providing the letter from the bank, just like the instructions have within the EAPR. So it is possible, but make sure that there's no doubt that that it is an irrevocable gift. Okay, let's go to the next question here. Let's see here. I've got to be a little bit more selective this morning. Okay. Okay. So this will be the last Q&A, the last question for today. Okay. So this one is from Dr. Ashima. Okay, Dr. Ashima. Hi, dear. Hello. I am a postgraduate dentist from India. I have subscribed your EE guide. It's awesome. Awesome! Okay, someone else is telling you how awesome the guide is, and not just me, and I'm sure all of you are saying, this is just some crazy lawyer who's just trying to sell his guide, and it's nothing special, and you can get all the information for free on the website, so why pay anything? And you can get the answers within the Express Entry Law Facebook group anyway, so why buy the course? Well, you buy the course because me and Ashima are saying it's awesome, because it is. Okay, moving on here. She says here, it has given me confidence that I can pursue the Canada immigration process by myself. Thanks a lot for making such a nice and crisp guide. I want to clear some of my doubts that are. So here's the doubts. So here's number one. For ECA, Educational Credential Agency, or Educational Credential Assessment, which agency should I contact? It's MCC or any other? Well, the reality is all of them are designated. There isn't one that's necessarily better than another, but I have heard of some people getting credentials acknowledged through one where they weren't at a level that were a little bit higher than another. So it's hard to say. Most people I know use WES, but there are other agencies out there, and you can use any of them, so there's no restriction. And I don't really endorse or recommend one over another. You indicate my husband is also a postgraduate dentist from India, so he should be primary applicant. If yes, then do I need to get an ECA done? If you need the comprehensive ranking system points, I always recommend that both spouses get their educational credential assessments done. And I do that just so that you can maximize your comprehensive ranking system points so that you can qualify. If you don't need them, then you don't have to. But wherever possible, I recommend that people actually do. The third one, some consultants in India have told us that both of us should submit separate applications as primary applicant. Whichever applicant is accepted, proceed with that primary applicant. Is it advisable? Well, I think that's just stupid, I'll be honest. Like, you can figure out exactly what your comprehensive ranking system score is going to be. Like I told you, it's a computer that's assessing it. So obviously one of you is going to have more comprehensive ranking system points than the other. So why would you submit two separate profiles? Because you're always going to tell who's going to rank the highest. I guess if you want to, there's no restriction on it. Anyone can submit a profile. You can totally do that. But I guess my question is, if you're both qualifying under the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you both, are submitting your profiles at the same time, you know what your education is, you know what your language tests are, you know what your scores are, so why would you waste time submitting two profiles? Like, it just doesn't make sense. That's someone who doesn't know what the heck they're doing, i.e. the Indian consultants, who are just using this shotgun approach, I describe it as, where they're just doing everything because they don't really know what they're doing, and just they're like taking a bowl of spaghetti and throwing it against the wall to see which spaghetti strand is going to stick to the wall. Like literally, it's that just tells me the people who are advising you don't know what they're doing, because it's totally unnecessary. If you know that circumstances are going to change with one person versus another, well then, okay, maybe there's a reason for it. But generally, everything is predictable. And if it's not, if someone says it's uncertain, then you're wrong, because you know what your scores are comparable to your spouse. All right, I have, that covers everything that I wanted to cover today in this Express Entry live Q&A. And this is really live. And actually, I'm going to flip this around here. And I'm going to show you where I'm recording here. Let's see if I can flip it around. Okay, give you a quick shot. There's my house, and there's my backyard, and there's the kids' tramp, and there's my garden that I have to weed over there. And this is the back of my house. So there's my house. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Subscribe to the Express Entry step-by-step guide. It is awesome. Listen to the people who are sending me questions, who are subscribing. I know you'll benefit from it. Thank you for listening. Thanks to all of you who are commenting and leaving your comments here within the within this live Q&A. Thanks to all of you who are answering questions of everybody else. There are 29,000 of you people. 29,000 that are on the group. I can't physically respond to everyone. I try my very best. If you want to book a consultation with me, I will put a link to where you can book that consultation. I understand once again with my phone, the link was broken and it wasn't letting you leave a comment. If you want to ask a question to be covered in my next upcoming Q&A, then send an email to mholthy@stringham.ca, and remember to always put EE Live Q&A in the subject line. I will catch you again soon. Take care, everyone.